Hi, everybody. This is Aaron Myers from Ishmael Interactive. Today I am here with Anna Monroe, our CEO, and we are discussing the FAR 10 overhaul. Anna, would you like to give us a little introduction of what we're talking about and what role in the conversation we see us playing here?
Yeah, so obviously the FAR 10 overhaul is this a huge deal if you are in government contracting. And Aaron, I have to say, you're the expert in the FAR. I've never worked in a contracting role, but I'm an expert in products and systems, and I'm really excited to hear you tell me what's changed, and I'm just going to react to it from a product and systems standpoint. Um, I feel that this is going to be an interesting conversation. And by interesting, I mean fraught. Sure.
Absolutely, it will be.
Yeah.
To give my credentials really quickly, I was one of the first level three, that's the highest level of cores that are in the federal government, which means you are a contract officer representative at the highest possible level at the EPA. Uh, 60 to $100 million in contracts, enterprise license agreements, interagency agreements at a single time. And I did this for maybe 10 years. And honestly, if I'm going to be honest, if you want to be one of the top authorities in the old FAR, all you had to do was read it a few times because it's 2,000 pages long and nobody does that. You know?
Yeah, but you enjoy games, and so you can get through
Yeah,
really interesting games.
yeah.
I, on the other hand, have a terminal degree in design and authored the federal guidelines on human centered design. And so those are my credentials coming into this. I also ran the only fully dedicated service design team in the federal government for GSA. And we ran the enterprise digital experience team in order to modernize and move forward the digital footprint of GSA, which we did. We making around $12 million for the agency in pure efficiencies, and decreasing our digital footprint by 37% without any of the drama that is currently going on. So really proud of that. So those are our two sides. So I know nothing about the FAR, but I'm
Yes.
excited to think about it from my own perspective.
Now, to lay out some context for our audience that isn't necessarily neck deep in federal contracts, because that is not everybody, you have these program offices like the one Anna was running who have these needs and they must acquire them from the open market. We're saying things everybody already knows at this point. They would create a statement of need, an RFQ, an RFP, that's request for quote, request for proposal, and they would work with a core, what I was doing, a contract officer representative, and a contract officer to put those things out for acquisition in a way that is fair and equitable to the market and to all those companies who should be doing business with the government for the benefit of the taxpayer. And FAR 10 is market research. When you have all of these rules in federal acquisition regulations, that's what FAR stands for. It's all about, is this the best value or is this the lowest cost to the government? But it has to be put into the greater context of in comparison to what.
Right.
So you have to define the need and the market.
So does the FAR actually talk about the difference between value and cost, because these two things are very different?
Yes, there are different kind of contract vehicles, different kind of statements of work that you can put out for your competition, and you are fully enabled to define whether or not you are looking for best value, whether or not you are chasing objectives, or if you are looking for low cost.
Why would you, hypothetically, why would anyone go after the lowest cost at the sacrifice of value? Like, how is that possible?
So that usually happens when you are talking about a good where you don't expect a wide variety of quality. And
Oh,
it's just like a simple good, like let's say number two pencils.
I don't know. I see. This is
Well,
where product design comes in because there
yes.
is a wide variety of qualities in number two pencils. And actually, this does wrap to a federal contracting situation that I was a part of when we were working with the Veterans Experience Office. Um, we requested certain pencils and pens, and this caused what to the new Veterans Experience Office designers a was a completely confusing like kerfuffle because people were like, "How can you want these things?" And we're like, "We're designers. We have very specific pencils and pens that we want," and we were not able to get those things. And it was very confusing because, and I assume that it's because you couldn't acquire a better number two pencil.
So that is a fault of your core.
Okay, all right.
That's
Well,
what
I'll
that
I'll lay the
was.
fault to that person's
Yes.
door. I don't know who they were, but
Because what should happen at that point is it is up to a core, the contract officer representative, who is the glue between people with needs in government and the contract officer, to do the market research to define what should be in the consideration set of pencils you need. And if you are a specialized group where you are much more sensitive to quality because your needs are specialized, that is a different subset of market research. It is
oh,
upon them to say,
interesting.
oh, it's got to do these things that your average pencil doesn't do.
I mean, like draw a consistent line and have an eraser that works.
Yes, absolutely.
We
Some,
also requested gum erasers, and they were like, absolutely not. And we were like, what?
but this is why FAR 10 is so wildly important because without it, you're just sort of assuming that everybody's needs are the same. And if, Drupal or a pencil or a folder or a chair works for one person, it should work for everybody. And you don't have to research it. It's just what's there.
I love that you just compared Drupal and a pencil. I,
I,
I mean, you're right. That's what's fascinating about government procurement is that you're getting like it's literally everything. It's like, are
everything.
you buying a rocket ship? That's possible. Are you buying like Drupal, which is massive? That's possible. Are you buying pencils for a group of like 12 designers in a single agency?
Yes, yes, exactly. But
Yeah.
this is why it matters on the federal side. On the private industry side, we're the biggest customer. When we say we are willing to buy something specialized or to fit a certain need, sometimes that's the only way businesses who are honestly advancing technology stay in business long enough to
Yeah.
have market share. Real
Yeah.
companies live and die by how they exist on the federal market as they grow.
Well, that was the whole. That was a huge point of Mariana Mazzucato's the entrepreneurial state. Was the government is the market before there's a market, and that's why government investment is so crucial. Because when you are first starting up, to your point, there's no buyers because there's no one knows it exists yet, and your thing
Mhm.
has like no resonance with the rest of the world, and so the government investment is incredibly crucial at a long game
Yep.
play on an economy. And there's pluses and minuses to that. Like we get some great things, and then sometimes we get, you know, I don't know, like Tesla or something.
Yeah, but well, these are
Am I wrong? No.
no, you're not wrong. I'm just trying to quickly move on before I get myself in trouble. But this is, and that's why FAR10 is crucial because it's how these people get the foot in the door at that early stage.
Yeah.
And that's why it matters on their side. The FAR10, which they just recently overhauled, is a noble and good mission.
Okay.
It's part of a larger FAR overhaul effort to, first and foremost, simplify and use less words.
Okay.
Desperately needs to be done. Like I said, 2,000 pages, nobody reads them.
Right.
Which is why usually when I was at the EPA, I could walk into most rooms with citations and I would win most differences of opinion. Um, but it shouldn't exist that way. This should be something that isn't hard to enter into as a field of expertise because
So how long is the new one? Is it down to 1,000 pages?
it's still coming out, so we're not entirely sure yet. They're working chunk by chunk.
Okay.
But the new FAR 10 does several things good. It does several things that I'm hoping they will improve upon in the future. And the old 410 did have its pluses it that was good to have too.
Okay.
So the old FAR 10, what it did is it laid out if you are going to market research, you do it these ways.
Hmm.
Here's a list of different ways you could do market research if you're going you not if you are going to, when you do, because everybody has to. It is mandatory. Here are the ways to do it. The problem is it didn't keep track of the times, and some of those ways got very outdated.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the ways to do market research in the previous FAR 10 is, did you look through a business catalog or a product catalog?
Yeah. Well, I mean, depending on how you define catalog, I guess that could be applicable to like an online catalog, right? They meant print. They meant print. Okay.
They meant print. It didn't say print, and a lot of people over time started to interpret it the way you are, just to
Hmm.
stay relevant. But even then, when it comes to online catalogs, I don't think it's enough
No.
because,
Yeah.
yeah,
So okay, here's a dummy question. Here's a dummy question.
no
The
such
super
thing.
basement.
Yeah.
Why do you need a document that tells feds how to do market research, except for the like equitable bit, which I totally get, right? Like the thing that, for example, I love about federal hiring is that it is actually truly the only double blind merit based hiring system that I've ever seen, like in reality, really tried. And it is a pain in the ass. Like you were Peace Corps, right? But
Yes.
I applied three times as open public, and I got a job all three times, and I was that was great. That was great for me. I tried very hard. I worked really hard for all of those. But it was fair as long as you understood what the system was trying to do, which was they were trying to make every application instance an equitable experience for every applicant, with the noted exception of like people who had like points, like veterans and Peace
Right.
Corps and people like that, right? But I didn't have any of those, so it didn't matter to me. Um, for market research, you want to have like an equitable approach, and I get that, but like there's no like if I'm doing market research in the private sector, I like literally like go browse websites, right? Like that's what I'm doing. And then I sort of cobble together the information that's publicly available. And then I turn around to my client or my boss and I say, well, here's the world as we know it. Why do we have to write that down for feds? Because nobody writes that down in the private sector. And how do they make it equitable?
So there are three big reasons this happens that I was able to arrive at when thinking about this. Number one is when I started off in federal government working contracts, I was dumb. I didn't have a
Okay.
ton of private industry experience, and I just needed some suggestions for how to do market research. What are some good and accountable ways to do it? So,
I wish I had that. I remember you were not dumb. You were young. When I was young, my boss, like the only boss I ever had before the federal government, was like, figure out where we're going to get something printed. And I like didn't even know where to start. So I guess that's what you're referring to, right?
yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
The other, the second reason is when you don't have a list of methods, you got to account for the wide variety of people and motivations who are tasked to do this. And no list of methods leaves people just the widest range of ways to cheat the system.
So there are methods that are outlined in the FAR.
Yes,
Methods.
in
Okay,
the
so
old
tell me
FAR.
some. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
in the old FAR. Okay.
It's things like go ask some industry experts, go look at catalogs,
Mhm.
simple ways. But if you don't have that, then people can almost put anything down and say this is market research. And then define the market in a way that is as broad or as narrow as they want instead of what
Mm,
the information actually tells them it should be. The
fair.
other thing is, and like I said, this is not even a majority of government situations, but you do have to protect people from it when it does happen, is very often the core is not the boss. And when they are tasked with acquiring something, they are usually not tasked with a need, they are tasked with a product or a service. They say, go get me Esri, go get me Apple iPhones. And
Wait.
mhm,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
they say, go get me thing.
As
And
opposed to like, we need a thing to solve a problem. It's like go acquire object.
yeah, because a lot of bosses have a ton of experience and a ton of confidence. So they think they already know the answer. And many times they can be right.
Right.
But to be equitable, it helps a core to have a list they can point to and say, I would love to go get you thing, but I have to do this first.
So basically, what this does is it forces the people who might be like have entrenched interests and not in any like a nefarious way, just like this is the product I know, from like sticking with that product forever
Yes.
because that is the product they know. From a designer standpoint, I wish that we had this like for the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Think of the current, I know we come to this topic often, but it is world shaking, so why not? But think of the current technology market in the face of AI. The IT industry goes through major shifts, what, every 6 months now?
Ugh.
And your average contract term is a 7 year contract with renewals once every year. You're already going to be outdated before the second year. Because
Well, it depends on
possibly.
how much you really trust the hype on the tech. You know what?
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience in tech, and I would say that this is where we circle back to that idea of cost over value, right? Or
Hmm.
value over cost, because I think that, and maybe you will tell me that the FAR actually allows for this. What needs to happen is that instead of go get me object, there needs to be more of a dialogue, it sounds like, where and an open-endedness. So if we know that we need to solve an AI problem, instead of going and acquiring like Google's AI tool or whatever it is for 7 years, we need to focus on the problem instead of the object, Google's AI or an AI in general.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, but I guess
And
that's probably not happening.
it happens when everything goes well.
Okay,
And I think the intent of the FAR10 overhaul is to make it easier for it to happen when everything goes well. So the new FAR10,
cool.
much shorter, and it doesn't say you have to specifically do these things.
Oh, cool. All right, that's good.
So
Step in the right direction.
it leaves interpretation open to people who actually want to chase the problem instead of the product. Because when you have all of these products and all of these values changing so quickly, the way in which you do market research might have to adapt just as quickly. And now you
Right.
have legal room to do that. So when everybody has the best thought in mind and they're aligned in goals and values, this is a huge step forward. But when they don't have the right goals and values in mind and people have their difference of opinions and the conflict, keeping a close eye on the federal employees who are doing the things becomes that much more important.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it will be better when everybody's doing the right thing. It is more dangerous when some people don't want to do the right thing.
And so what do you do about it? So, okay, what I'm hearing is the FAR10 update opens up the field, is less prescriptive about the market research methodologies that any core needs to undertake in order to acquire things for the federal government. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is good because it allows people to have latitude around the steps they have to take in order to acquire things for the government, as opposed to being like, go read a physical catalog, which doesn't really, it applies in some cases here now, but
Right.
not very many. But on the other hand, anytime you open a system up, it also opens the system up for greater interpretation. And the line between interpretation and cheating the system is the reason we have a court system. Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
so hard. And
Yes.
so, who determines these lines? Is there like a ruling body, or is it up for grabs? Does every agency do it themselves? Like, how do they figure it out?
So there is something called the CPARS. The CPARS is a contractor review that every Corps is supposed to give
Okay.
in terms of whether or not that contractor was providing true value.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is one useful way of staying up to date on whether or not the system is actually delivering.
Hmm.
And honestly, while it is usually used just to assess the contractor, it should also be used to assess the program office, the Corps, and the CO, because the big question is if you did not grade your contractor super well, why did you keep them?
Well, that the question I have to ask now is, can the answer ever be because everybody else was even worse?
If you know that and if you gave everybody opportunity to prove that, sure, why not? Absolutely. And this is where we get into like king for a day territory. What are the bright big ideas, things that could be done to demonstrably make things better?
Hmm.
And we've had some time to brainstorm and to think about it, and there are all sorts of things you can do. Honestly, the value of the work has to align. So you know even the low cost has to provide value. So there has to be good multidimensional measurement, human-centered
Right.
design
That's what I was
measurement
literally just thinking. I was like, how can I
in
work
all
this in?
things.
You got to
Yes.
have a compiled indicator for every contract. That's how
Abs-
you determine value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing is, and this is something, there's two parts to this. One part that I have always had a sort of a bone to pick with traditional contract practices, something that I do not like. I believe market research should never end. It should be continuous. You do not stop researching the market. Common
I
pra-
Yeah, okay, go ahead. You go.
Common practice is to start research when you are looking for a need, end research when you have acquired need. However, the best thing the law ever did for government acquisitions is it gave the government the right to terminate for convenience,
Yeah.
which means if for any reason I don't think this is providing value to the government, it's not doing the best by taxpayer dollars, bye bye. And that's how it should be. But if it
I mean, should
okay,
be. All right,
yeah.
let's look at this a little closer. Terminating for convenience, and I've been adjacent to one of those, and it's a rough and tumble match, I would say.
Oh, it is.
See, that's where I think you should have like a well-rounded impact measure in place so that the contractor also knows where they stand. Because otherwise, when like things can go wrong with the relationship that are not pertinent to the acquired object, right? The wrong people in the room, and wrong in this case means just like people who for whatever reason do not communicate well, are not on the same page or whatever, can tank a contract, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't seem fair to anyone, right? Like everybody's time is wasted in that case. And so it's completely odd to me that this FAR update or even like past FARs have not put into place a well-rounded measurement instrument requirement for understanding what value is being acquired. Let's go back to those number two pencils.
Yeah.
If they had required us, if they were like, we will acquire your Blackwing pencils for you, you total snobs, but you have to tell us why this is good and that it is performing for you. And Blackwing has to tell us that like you're not demanding a bazillion pencils per month and we're like deforesting the eastern seaboard or whatever. I don't know where Blackwing pencils are made. Um, that would have been fine with me because like, yeah, that's cool. I have to like I have to demonstrate the value of the pencils, and they have to
Yes.
demonstrate that they are not required to like go and do, bad things for the United States in order to fulfill this contract. But what you're telling me is like there isn't any of that
No, no, no,
until
no.
people are
No.
mad at each other.
The bar for termination by convenience should be high. Because if it is not high, if you can't elaborate on a nice objective reason why you are terminating, it opens up the doors to hostage situations, to
Yeah.
places where federal government can tell a contractor, you need to do this or you're just not making money. Whether it's legal, not legal, you don't want to make those situations possible. So you do need a well-defined reason for termination by convenience. The convenience should be well defined, but we're glad it's there. And we're glad it's there because at any time when we can show that there is a better value of the dollar for the taxpayer, we don't have to wait.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And a part of why they're making the FAR smaller, in my mind, is what they're going to do is they're going to make it easier and less work for when that happens to go out and get a new one.
Right.
Because some terminations by convenience don't happen because I can't be without a thing for 4 months, and that's how long it's going to require me to get a new one. If shrinking the FAR cuts that down to 1 month and acquisitions happen quicker, you get more terminations in the name of the taxpayer dollar and value to the government.
Okay, so I get that. You're right. I mean, making the lag time between a termination and a new acquiring of of a thing, an object, is clearly a plus. So if the shorter, more compact FAR has that faculty, I think that feature, that sounds really, really good. But what are we doing about like the continuous market research that you talked about earlier? Like, is that a thing yet or no?
A lot of people don't do it. They should. Nobody's going to stop a core from doing it. I used to do it because it was important with the types of contracts I dealt in because there was turnover in quality going at rocket speed the whole time. And the
Mm,
second something comes up in the horizon, you want to know it.
totally.
Another thing, though, because this shouldn't all be in the hands of the federal government, you want to empower industry to say, "Hey, I am the value." Is I, and this is a wild idea, but I fervently believe RFPs, requests for proposals, should stay open for the life of the contract.
A rolling application method. That's a good idea.
Absolutely. And if you reward your contract to somebody, the bar for saying, hey, I'm better than these people has to be incredibly high.
Right, because otherwise you'll just get people sniping at the incumbent's heels, and it'll require the incumbent to like defend their rear flank all the time, which takes energy away from like providing value to the government. So it
Yeah.
would need to be quite high.
Too
Yeah,
easy to manipulate the market if it's not super high.
yeah,
But it should be possible.
yeah,
At
totally.
any point, you need to empower a market to prove their value and the federal government to go after that value. It can't just happen when you reach the term of a contract or you're reacquiring because private industry does not work on the federal schedule.
Right. And the federal government has a much longer term investment in their things than
Hmm.
private industry does. I mean, like I'll never forget how funny it is that like GSA is like a young agency. What it was started by Truman. It's a young agency, and it's like I think it was like a very low number of private companies exist as long as this young agency, right? It's just like the timelines are different, and that's
Yeah,
cool. That's awesome. That shows the complexity of our world, but where these two timelines have to interface means there have to be rules for engagement.
exactly. Exactly.
Really? Oh my God,
So
that's fascinating. I love that.
so this is a good move. It is a thing that should be overhauled.
Yeah.
But in any overhaul there are dangers and we're saying we see them and there are hopes and we're saying we see them. And Honestly, I just hope everybody involved gets the luck they need because this is maybe the biggest mission I've seen in government ever in my
Well,
life.
let's continue it on a part two because I see
Yes.
we're up on time. Yeah, I want to learn more. So this is
Okay.
great. I want to hear some stories about EPA contracts and what you would
Excellent.
do if you said the thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You want to wrap us up?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, from us here at Ishmael Interactive. The post has changed, but the mission continues.